why do humans have such strong stomach acid? A lot of people say that it's because we're carnivores. Carnivores have strong stomach acid, humans have strong stomach acid, therefore we're carnivores. Does that make sense? Hello everyone, I'm Tom Sanchin, and today I'm going to talk about why I think humans have strong stomach acid and what this means for us. So, I don't think people are being illogical. I think there is a certain logic to it. Humans have strong stomach acid, pretty much on par with carnivores. Sometimes I see that it's weaker than carnivores. Sometimes I see that it's stronger, but it's definitely stronger stomach acid than typical herbivores, and it's more in line with carnivores. So I can understand why people would say, okay, well then, we have strong stomach acid like carnivores, we're probably carnivores. But I think even within the stomach, and especially throughout the digestive system as a whole, there are some inconsistencies. So within the stomach itself, carnivores have strong stomach acid, yes, but they usually also keep their food in their stomachs for a really long time in order to give that stomach acid time to break down their food. But humans don't really keep our food in our stomachs for very long. It seems weird to have really strong stomach acid if you don't give your stomach acid the time to break down your food. And you could say, well, maybe that's because we tend to eat smaller pieces because we cut it up or whatever. Maybe, but more important than that, I think, is that humans, unlike carnivores, have very small stomachs relative to our body size. A lot of typical carnivores can eat up to 25% of their body weight in meat at one time. That would be the equivalent of me eating a little bit less than 40 pounds of meat in one sitting, which, that's not going to happen ever. That can't happen. Humans can't get close to that much food inside our stomachs because our stomachs are really small compared to the stomachs of carnivores. So, yes, we have strong stomach acid, but we don't keep our food in our stomachs for very long, and we have really small stomachs compared to our body size, which is really disadvantageous if you're a carnivore. Pretty much any carnivore would benefit from having a larger stomach where they can cram more of their food in one time, just in case they have to run away from a kill, in case they I don't know, anything could happen where they have to cram as much food into the stomach at one time, and then they have to leave, or the food runs out for a while, or something. So, like I said, there are some inconsistencies here. So my question is there an alternative explanation for why humans have strong stomach acid? And I think there is an alternative explanation, and I think it's a good one, actually. I think it makes a lot of sense. So, if you look at typical herbivores, they have much weaker stomach acid. And the reason for that, a lot of the reason for that is that they eat foods that don't have a lot of bacteria on them. They have some, but relatively they have a lot less bacteria on them than dead animals because they eat leaves and grass or fruits or nuts, things like that, which don't have a high bacterial load. But there is a type of plant food, actually, which would have a much higher bacterial load. It's important to know that the bacterial load under the ground is an order of magnitude higher, or tremendously higher than the bacterial load above the ground in the atmosphere on above ground vegetables. So if you were, say, eating a lot of plants, but those plants were root vegetables that had been grown in the soil, picked from the soil, underground, they would probably have a lot more bacteria on them than leaves and fruits and grass, which were grown above ground. So, I think there's a plausible explanation here to say that humans were made to eat root vegetables rather than above ground plants and rather than meat, and that explains their humans' strong stomach acid. And I think eating a diet centered around root vegetables would fit more in line with the rest of the traits of our digestive tracts. If you look at, let's start with the mouth. If you look at our teeth, 5 out of 8 of your teeth are grinding teeth. That makes sense if you're eating a diet of root vegetables. It doesn't really make sense if you're eating meat, and you can say, well, we cut it up, so like our teeth don't really matter that much once we have stone tools. Maybe. But we also have relatively small throats. Humans choke on our food all the time. Not literally all the time, but like way more than we should. And the number one thing that we choke on is meat. Whereas true carnivores never choke on their food. Like, they don't chew it up because they don't have cheeks. We have cheeks. True carnivores don't chew their food, and still they never choke on it. I mean, you can picture like a snake that has like the shape of an egg halfway through its body. It's like bigger, wider around than the rest of the snake, and still it's just fine. It's fine. That's carnivores. We choke on our food all the time, and the number one food we choke on is meat. So that would be inconsistent with eating a lot of meat. Makes a lot more sense if you say we ate plants, especially root vegetables. We also, in our mouths, we have more starch-digesting enzyme in our saliva than any other plant-eating animal, and most carnivores have none. So that would be very inconsistent to say we eat a lot of meat, but we have the starch-digesting enzyme in our saliva, and that starch-digesting enzyme comes from a genetic mutation, which the best data I've seen for it says that genetic mutation occurred 800,000 years ago, which happens to coincide with an increase in brain size in the human evolutionary lineage, which makes perfect sense if you say, hey, we ate a lot of starch, and then we got this genetic adaptation to digest starch better, and then our brains got bigger. That makes perfect sense. If you say we ate a lot of meat, and then we got this genetic adaptation to digest starch better, and then our brains got bigger, that doesn't make any sense. And then if you go farther down in the digestive system, we have gut bacteria that seem to be made to eat starch and inulin, which are both found in abundance in root vegetables. They're not found in abundance in above ground vegetables, so I agree that we're not like a typical herbivore. And they're not found in abundance in meat, obviously, but they are found in abundance in root vegetables. So to me, from head to tail, we seem like we're made to eat root vegetables, and having a strong stomach acid fits into that picture, I think, pretty perfectly. Especially when you consider, like I was talking about gut bacteria, when you consider that our gut bacteria, one of the other things that we eat pretty well is, or that our gut bacteria eat pretty well, is lactic acid bacteria. Or maybe they don't eat it, they somehow thrive in the presence of lactic acid bacteria. And importantly, that's whether or not the lactic acid bacteria is alive. If you give someone lactic acid bacteria probiotics, then their bifidobacteria, their human-specific gut bacteria, called a group called bifidobacteria, goes up. If you give them lactic acid bacteria probiotics, but then you heat kill all of the bacteria, their bifidobacteria still goes up. The human-specific gut bacteria goes up whether or not the lactic acid bacteria is alive. And I would assume that would make sense, that would work whether it was the lactic acid bacteria was killed by heat, by cooking, or by being bathed in a solution of acid that's too strong for the lactic acid bacteria to survive. Lactic acid bacteria does pretty well at about 4 to 6 pH, is what I thought I saw. And it's killed at about 1.5, which is pretty close to what humans have. So I think it makes a lot of sense to say that, hey, human gut bacteria eats starch, inulin, and lactic acid bacteria, which, by the way, grows really, really well on vegetables. It's the group of bacteria that grows in abundance in fermented vegetables. Human-specific gut bacteria eats all of these things. All of these things would have been found on root vegetables naturally. So, and the stomach acid is there to, maybe to kill the lactic acid bacteria, because our gut bacteria still take advantage of them, but then killing those bacteria and other bacteria prevents bacterial overgrowth in other places like the small intestine. I think when you say, hey, we're not made to center our diets around meat, we're not typical herbivores, we're actually meant to center our diet around root vegetables, I think all of the parts of our digestive system seem to make a lot of sense. I think this is the answer that makes the most sense, to say we have starch digesting enzyme in our mouths, we have strong stomach acid to kill the pathogens that would be on the root vegetables. There would be more because there's more bacteria underground than above ground. And then we have gut bacteria that eat basically everything that would be left over from root vegetables. I think it makes a lot of sense. If you say we're made to eat a lot of meat, really the only thing that makes a lot of sense is the strong stomach acid. If you say we're like typical herbivores, again, only a little parts of it make sense, like having cheeks and chewing and things like that. But if you say we're made to eat root vegetables, I think it all makes sense together. So I think I'm kind of rambling at this point. I'm going to cut it short, or I'm going to stop there, and I look forward to the comments. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of comments from people who most likely haven't made it this far in the video, saying that I'm really stupid. That's okay. I can take it. If you have watched this far, I appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed it. Hope that you learned something. If you still think I'm wrong, that's totally fine. Please, leave a comment if you want to share some thoughts, and we can openly, honestly engage about these ideas. Otherwise, if you like the video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. And always remember to eat your root vegetables. Thank you.